Hello, everybody. This is the first episode of a two-sided argument on Sportiversity. We will be talking about the article at hand, and today it is Tom Coughlin and what might have happened if the Giants signed him as their general manager and vice president. So, as we know, he was signed to the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he started his coaching career in the NFL. And last season they were 3-13. This season they're already 4-3. They have a much improved offense. He drafted Leonard Fournette. Blake Bortles is finally showing signs of life. Even with Allen Hurns as their only wide receiver after the Allen Robinson injury on the first play of the season, they're already 4-3. So we can kind of see how well he's done so far. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about what might have happened if he was, made the Giants general manager over Jerry Reese, of course. So this season with the Giants, we've seen the demise of the offensive line and basically the entire team as a whole. Reese failed to address the offensive line in free agency and in the draft, which more or less caused the failure of the offense because, I mean, Eli Manning needs time. That's a basic understanding of the way he plays. He reads the pressure, he goes through his progressions, and this year he hasn't been able to do so. And what's interesting is that the second that Tom Coughlin left the Giants 2 years ago, Jerry stopped really caring about the offensive line. For a majority of Tom Coughlin's reign in New York, he had Chris Snee, Kareem McKenzie, David Deal, Sean O'Hara, David Bass. He had a plethora of really good offensive linemen, and the second he left, we had Eric Flowers come on. John Jerry was signed to a new deal for absolutely no reason. So it's it's interesting to think about why that happened, and maybe Tom Coughlin had a little bit more of a say in the war room, as they call it, in the draft room, than people seem to think. He clearly had significant, input that Jerry's used to draft players. So the second he left in the offensive line, kind of crashing, is interesting if you ask me. It doesn't really make much sense. And now that he's on Jacksonville, a team that's been struggling for years, basically in last place every year, is now in second place. So the fact that he could change that team in one season as general manager makes me think, we should have kept him, especially the way that we let him go. He was basically pushed out the door. He was given the option to retire or get fired, and he chose to retire. And when he went to say his goodbye speech, he basically just walked right past the owners of the Giants and didn't even shake their hand. And he said how much he loved it there and he loved his players, and he didn't really mention much of the offense, of the general manager and any all the basically the front office in general. So it's pretty interesting to think about. Obviously, this is just a theoretical idea of what might have happened, but if I was to guess, I would say that we'd probably be better in a better position than we are right now. I would say Evan Ingram wouldn't have been our first pick because Jerry Reese tends to go after the more, the most talented player in the draft, the highest graded player on the draft board, as he would say. We have Eli Apple, Eric Flowers, and Evan Ingram now was his highest graded player, which doesn't make much sense because a lot of better players were drafted ahead of them. That's just the bottom line. So to think that maybe Coughlin would have addressed the offensive line knowing that we didn't have any real depth. John Jerry is basically a swinging door at right guard. Eric Flowers is awful. It doesn't really make much sense to me, and I think that if Coughlin was there, we may have taken Ryan Ramczyk, something like that, or Garrett Bowles, a bunch of guys that have been playing really well in their rookie seasons. So definitely something to consider. The fact that we might have made one of the biggest mistakes we'll make in a long time, that we didn't bring Coughlin back on because he knows the Giants, he knows Eli Manning, he knows how they play, and they brought in Ben McAdoo, who's basically the worst coach I've seen in my entire life watching the Giants. So just something to consider and think about as we're heading into the offseason, that maybe we need somebody with a little bit more experience at head coach, maybe a general manager, because Reese only became general manager when he was with the Giants. So, he hasn't had much experience with other teams and other organizations, see how they go about things. So at this point, maybe we need to invest in a little bit more, expertise and the offensive side of the ball, because we have a lot of defensive pieces that are signed long term. So we don't really have to invest in the defense right now, except for maybe linebacker. in corner after DRC is gone next season, because he's on his last year of the deal next season. But we do need to address the offensive line. That is the first and foremost thing for next season. I would even consider saying draft Saquon Barkley and then go offensive lineman in the second round, maybe even pick up somebody in free agency. Or if we end up getting a really high pick, which at this point seems rather likely, we should trade back and consider even taking McGlinchey from Notre Dame in the first round, and then taking another offensive lineman in the second, just solidifying the line for years to come. So something to think about. Just a theoretical idea with Tom Coughlin being the Giants general manager. Interesting thoughts, but let me know what you think.